you're the guy this time. You're the lead in this movie.
It was a shock. It was a shock. In typical Chris fashion, there was no build-up or preamble. I just got a call. I think it was, in fact, Emma who called me, because Chris doesn't have a phone. And put Chris on the phone, and then he said, I had genuinely zero idea, and he said, I'm making a film about Oppenheimer, and I'd like you to play Oppenheimer. And so, you know, you just have to sit down for a moment and kind of gather your thoughts, and I knew it was a big one, but it was absolutely kind of electrifying feeling, but also terrifying. But that's the place I always like to be when I'm making work. I don't ever want it to feel easy or safe, but this was a biggie, and I knew it was a huge responsibility, a huge amount of work. But we had 6 months, and I think, you know, that sort of all that work with Chris, because it's nearly 20 years, or I think it is 20 years since we started working together. So I think, you know, I felt that really well-established, deep trust and connection with Chris and with Emma, and so I felt kind of ready for it, you know. And any actor in the world would want to work with Chris Nolan, not to mind playing a lead for him. So it was huge and terrifically exciting.
And it's an incredible journey that you take us on here with him, from, you know, his younger days all the way to the end there, all the different looks and challenges. But it's also a moral journey. You watch this, which I thought was the most fascinating part of it. You watch this man who's really responsible for this, and then questioning himself ultimately too, the moral problems that go with it, which I thought was exceptionally well written and played by you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, the script was genuinely one of the best things I'd ever read. It was staggering, kind of in its ambition and in the scale, but also in how clearly he had plotted through the story of Oppenheimer. You know, he had written it in the first person, which I'd never encountered before, so that was a new experience for me reading that. And like you say, these are the biggest moral dilemmas possible, the biggest drama possible, the stuff that all these characters are grappling with. So you just have to dive in. But, you know, Chris, having written it and adapted it from the book, and having lived with it so long, he has such a wonderful understanding of the story and how he wants to tell the story and how the character should be portrayed. So we just, like, we worked incredibly closely from the very beginning to figure it out.
Twirling some device he had, doing something. What was that like? I mean, that's visual effects, like, right there in person.
It was incredible. I think that was actually the first day of shooting. Yeah.
It was.
And I was in this bed, and then we had the huge IMAX camera going, and then Chris was in front of me doing this with the, and it was spinning, and I was like having to emote. And I think at one point Chris was actually in the bed with me. And you think it was really making film. You know what I mean? That's what it always feels like with Chris. You're really making it in the moment, in camera.
I remember just looking at it, thinking, okay, this is the first day. It looks a little close. Not his face. Not his face, please.